Welcome everyone to the We Can Do Better Conversations, episode 17. I'm pleased to have with me today Bhavana BP, Rishita Jones, and we're going to be talking today about a topic that's very current. We hear a lot of talk about in this COVID-19 environment about the new normal. And so we're going to explore that, right? What does that even mean? What is normal? What is new normal? And how might we look at this differently in terms of what comes next, right? And so I recently wrote something on this topic and was inspired to do so by the language used and my perception of it to try and help people, invite people, not help people because it's an invitation, invite people to see differently about what does normal mean, and is normal really what we want? And what is it that we want, and how do we help create that? So with that, Rishita, let me invite you in to kind of share your perspective on what is this new normal, and what is this thing we're looking to have that comes next? What does it look like? What is it?
My husband actually asked me that same question 2 days ago, and we were just going to bed, and he said, what's happening? What are we going through? When are we going to get over this? And what does the new normal look like? And I looked at him, and at that moment I said, I don't want a new normal. Why do you crave a new normal? Because normal is comfort. Normal is we're creatures of habits, right? As humans, and we want to know what it is, what's coming. We want to control. This need for control is what makes us crave a normal. And I said, actually, normal just puts us back into standards, back into boxes, back into expectations. We're chopping away at people, their individuality, their differences. And it's actually undoing everything that this crisis has actually, has gotten on the way. So I hope there is no new normal. I don't want a new normal.
Okay, so if it's not a new normal, Bhavana, let me bring you into it. What is your perspective on this new normal, and what are your experience with what's been going on in this concept of new normal?
First thing that I understand is this new phrase which has come into place is new normal. So I don't know what this new normal is or what it brings, because it's all about changes, right? It's all about how we perceive things and how things unfold themselves. And this current pandemic has brought in a lot of changes in everybody's life, and what we have seen all through has completely been shattered or maybe turned into a different direction, and maybe people cannot handle it. That's what they call new normal. And there are a set of people who want to go back into doing the same old routine, the same old things that they've always done in their life. And there are some of the other people who find comfort in what they're doing now. And this living in a situation which is, yes, of course, threatening to many. And yet, you're taking each day as it comes by, and probably that's the new normal. And you're living it fully. You're living every moment of it. That's the new normal that I see. And when it comes to my own personal thing, I would say that I'm perfectly abnormal, and I really enjoy doing that.
I love that language of perfectly abnormal. I was like, aren't we all perfectly abnormal? That's another way to say unique, right? Perfectly abnormal, because it's true, right? And yet we aspire to normal, right? And we're kind of wired to be totally, absolutely everything but normal, right? And while I appreciate the shared humanity and the sameness from that perspective, so that we can accept one another and our differences and come together in a better way. I don't see the value. I see the comfort. I get that whole piece of it. I think we are creatures of comfort. There's this notion of coming back to comfort, like what Sheila was pointing us to, and this need for control and being able to have the answers and to be right and all these kind of human things that in terms of how we were initially wired with our reptilian brain and how that works. But what about the demands of now and the 21st century in 2020 right now, and kind of breaking away from our conditioning and how we're wired, and understanding that, wait a minute, yes, we have a reptilian brain that kind of is going to put us into a fight or flight mode when perceived risks comes up. So it gets me thinking about, okay, well, perceived risk is different in 2020. It could be cybersecurity. It could be someone's hacking my internet. It could be, these other things. And so the whole notion of new normal to me is built off of a fallacy of what normal is, because normal has evolved, and yet our relationship with normal has not evolved. And so that's the invitation I see for us is, what if we're in terms of what comes next and the forward-looking aspect of things. And I think the pause from this current devastating, insidious situation that we have right now, it's bringing up a lot of awesome things. We've seen nature changing and resetting because of the lessening of human activity, right? There's less cars driving, less pollution. All these things are happening positively. And so nature's kind of showing us the way. And so with that, people are resetting. It's like, oh, wow, you know what? Working from home, not so bad. I can be more productive. And then our bosses and leadership are saying, wow. And we were on the Humans First call yesterday, the friendship bench. And one guy that was on there was sharing a story about a client saying, this client before this ever happened was totally against remote working, absolutely 100% against it. Now you have no choice. Okay, fine. So he had to kind of acquiesce. After 2 months, he got the data on what was happening. It was improvement all over the place. And yet when this guy was working with his client and asking him, so, what happens after this? And he's like, well, we're going back to where it was before. This is okay for now, but I'm going back there. And 2 months worth of data that says better, 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 better all over the place. And so it's like, okay. And so we're always in choice, so you understand that. But where's the opportunity? What's going on there? And it's back to this notion of control and needing to be in control and maybe a little bit of uncertainty. And that's human and you can understand it. But we're going to invite us to see differently, right? This is what this conversation is about, seeing differently. And what if it was about creating and not wanting to go back to normal, whatever that is, or create a new normal, but it's to create a new shared reality that serves all. And then all includes the planet. It's like the environment where we live and the other people on the planet, right? And so humans first, right? All directionally moving towards this. We've been moving towards it for a while. And beyond, even before humans first, there's been many of us kind of wanting to bring more humanity to the workplace, to families, to communities, and to our relationships. And so what do you see as the invitation and what would this new shared reality look like in terms of your perspective and what you're seeing, what is working now in terms of things you see, and how might we help sustain those past just the time of the COVID? Rishita, what do you see?
I see a factory reset on humans. I see a reboot. We're wiping out our conditioned states, returning us to our original state. And I think this is actually quite wonderful because, you mentioned the regeneration of our ecosystem. Whilst our life, or whilst we've been on pause, everything else actually has continued, and it's growth. It's growing, it's revitalizing, it's regenerating, it's it's fantastic to see so much life sprout in these circumstances. And it made me realize actually how this regeneration is coming to us as humans. It's made us sort of wipe out our conditioned states, and it's allowed us to create space and room to download new apps and new software. Empathy, compassion, forgiveness. Just thinking about my work and team, we've come closer. We connect on a daily basis. We have conversations that we've never had. We've had a sneak peek or preview into their personal and private lives. I know what their living room looks like. I know their pets and the names. I received a bunch of flowers just like that 2 weeks ago, just to say thank you, and so great to have you. We are seeing an opening up of our human connection, because actually what it's done, what is a factory reset? What do we crave? What do we need as humans? We need connection, emotional connection to one another. We have an inherent desire to care for others, to help with their well-being. and to contribute. Actually, we want to contribute to a higher cause, to a higher purpose. This is how we get our sense of self-worth. And actually, what this crisis has done is given us this. And actually, in every crisis that we've lived through, humans have come together, and they've actually, it's like social glue. That's what's happened, and we weather it together, and that's what I see. See a human reboot in that sense.
I love that. And social glue, another good term. Great wisdom there. And factory reset, right? It does. It's a reboot. It really feels like that. That's at least the opportunity and the invitation. And
Yes.
I get curious about, you talked about your team has come closer, and you talked about how, but what kind of, why did it happen here, and why wasn't it necessarily happening before? What's different?
The difference is that when you're in the office, you don't have time, right? You're running from project to project, from meeting to meeting. No one gives you the space. No one gives you the time. There's no breathing opportunity. You don't have time for each other. You don't even, someone's talking to me and I'm looking at my screen. It's awful to think back that this is how we behaved. How I behaved. And what this has done is put a stop to all that. When I'm talking to you, I'm looking at you, looking into your eyes. I see you smile, you see me smile. We're connecting, even though we're virtual, in this conversation. We're close, actually. I'm seeing you, you see me. My daughter comes into the conversation sometimes, and she waves. Our walls have come down, right? We're showing ourselves up the way that we are. I think the difference is that we've all become a little bit more vulnerable in the way that we are, in the way that we, in our own environment. So we can't control that aspect anymore. And when others sort of see us in our own element, in our environment that we can't control, they start to drop their own walls, and they open up and they show us, the way that they are, who they are. And I think that's the difference, is that we make the time. We ask the question. I mean, every single conversation is, how are you, and how are you doing? How is your family? And how often do we do that? That's basics again, right?
Back to the beginning, right? Back to the basics. It's like we shed the conditioning and get back to who we actually are. How are you? And caring, because there's that distance of physical space. And you mentioned time too, and you talk about making the time. And I think we get in the office, we get conditioned to go, 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 go. And it's like, we don't make the time. We don't prioritize. How are you, Rishita? How are you, Bhavana? How was your weekend? Because that's viewed as wasting time. I'm wasting time. I don't have time.
Too soft, right?
Too soft.
Yeah.
And yet, when we are able to see people in their home environment, there's a vulnerability there. It's interesting, right? Vulnerability. And you made me think about vulnerability and this whole notion of work mask, right? And everybody's going in there and they're putting on their face and whatnot to survive. And now just Zoom and the screen here is like, it's like an eraser for the work mask, because now it's like, here, come see me. This is my home environment. This is who I am. And empathy and other things for people, and caring for people, like connection. It's interesting, you talk about connection. Because everybody's like, oh, I wish I was, and we all want to be in person and kind of hugging and doing that. But this notion of that human connection can happen virtually. I did a workshop, for lack of a better term, for my co-working space a couple of weeks ago. And I kind of reflected on when I was actually going into the co-working space, how I would go and do my thing, but not talk to a lot of people. This is over a period of months. Just because I was doing my thing, I didn't want to interrupt other people.
Sure.
I would record these sessions there. And then I get on one call with about 25 of them, and I've met 25 people in an hour. And I got to know, and we start to form a relationship there. And so this notion that you can't build connection, I think from virtually is a fallacy. It's, again, how we choose to look at it. So I love your point about this factory reset and what the offering is there. So Bhavana, what are you seeing in terms of this factory reset and the social glue that this invitation is happening right now from this current situation?
Couldn't agree more with Rishita on many, many points there, actually. The factory reset is something that's fantastic. Actually, we're going back to who we are, who we truly are. And knowing who we truly are again comes from within. So what I see, how I see, is that humans have had a lot of catastrophes along the way, right? Since the time we have been on this planet, and each time I guess this entire species has come together as a community, has worked together because we are social beings. And yet, this point in time, when we say that there are no hugs, there are no handshakes, and there are no people actually meeting each other, perhaps could jeopardize that kind of a relationship. And yet, we don't see that happening. It's actually grown more. It's the connection has grown, and there's more humane connection as I see it. There are people who have made time. They always had time, and yet they have only been now noticing that they have more time to talk to people actually and get to know them better. And I see that happening, and I see a lot of kindness and compassion coming out. There's a lot of love, because I see locally there are people who are adopting families who do not have financial support, and they're helping them out in ways that they can, and which I have not seen earlier. And this side of human nature is only coming up now, and I'm not, or probably I'm only noticing it now. So it's kind of made us slow down and take note of or observe things for the better. And it's only now that we are maybe noticing that we have more time for ourselves and for our passions, for our interests, for our self-care, and also make time for the community, for the people at large. And as you actually pointed out, there's more connection between people and their teams as well, because you get to know their families better. You get to know what happens. You've always been, probably there's a boss who says, why have you been late? And who somebody doesn't understand that there's an ailing parent at home, and now they know the actual reason, and they could be more supportive of that. And it's more like getting to know each other better on a heart-to-heart level or a soul-to-soul level than just a mental, intellectual plane. So this is what is, it's like it kindles, it cajoles the spirit. It's more like, there's more connection between people, and that's exactly when people learn better and learn and grow, because they don't have to put on a face. We've all spoken about that. They don't have to put on their face and come to work. They're sitting at home. It's their comfort zone. They don't have to travel anywhere. It's where they feel safest. And
Right.
and you get to meet their families. I've met so many people's children in the last couple of months. That, yeah, and people have met my child as well. So it's somewhere and understand their issues better. You probably become more empathetic and understand, put yourself in other people's shoes in an easier manner than earlier.
Well put. Thanks for that. So many things there. We talk about who we are and looking within, so I'll come back to that in a second. But think about all the things you and Rishita and we've all just talked about. Were those things available to us the whole time, or is it just now that they've become available to us?
They were with us all the time. It's only now that we're probably noticing.
Yeah, and so there's many things not to like about this current situation. It's and most things not to like about it. But the thing that kind of I get, cajole the spirit and like you talk about, and what I get jazzed about is, it's an awakening opportunity for people to say, wait a minute, look, this isn't just like, oh, the coronavirus came and it brought all this opportunity with it. It's like, no, look at all that stuff that we've had access to all along. We just haven't noticed because we've been too busy and so that's exciting for me. And you brought up this whole notion of this ability to kind of start with who we are and connect with who we are and to look within. And so I bring up this in the notion of the topic and relating it back to leadership, right? Leadership starts with yourself, right? And looking inward, and how can you serve up be there for your team, for your family, for your clients, your customers, if your relationship with yourself isn't in a good place, or you're not looking to continuously evolve it and grow it and be open to all aspects of you, the things that you love about yourself and the things that you may not, that and being comfortable and what I call confidently vulnerable, that I know who I am, I know who I'm not, and I'm okay with both, right? So that gives us, if I'm in a place of confident vulnerability, then I'm better able to accept myself, but also accept others. And so then the mindset there in terms of the leadership and how I engage and my empathy for people's situations, having a sick parent and being late to work or having a sick child or something along those lines is different. So talk about how this topic then relates to leadership, how you've seen it or how you see that it can. Rishita, maybe have you weigh in on that.
There's a few things about this topic that I love, because we're all energetic beings, right? We're energy, you know, and how we see ourselves impacts how we see others, how we treat them, and then how we're treated as a result, right? And this sort of takes me to the social psychologist in the 1960s. His name is Douglas McGregor. And I'm not sure whether you've heard of him before, but the idea that a manager's attitude has an impact on employee motivation was proposed by him in the 1960s, and it's still relevant today. And he proposed two contrasting theories: Theory X, which is about the control and command management style that we know of. And then he also proposed the contrasting theory of that, which is Theory Y, which is the participative one. And this is where, and this is the shift that I'm seeing, that if our managers see individuals, you know, as they're only here for the money, they are not motivated, I don't trust them, and they can't think, this is how you manage them. Then you impose that authoritarian control, you know, command and control style. But if you see individuals as capable, as motivated, you know, as inherently good, then you will treat them totally differently. You know, you will lead in a different way. So so I think this notion goes way beyond that. It goes to also how we view others. And this sort of theory is super, super interesting. And, you know, when change is sort of this constant, when constant change is the new normal, the idea that what was successful in the past, command control, in that type of, you know, life and businesses that we ran, it's no longer a guide what will be, you know, successful in the future. And I think that's sort of one of the things that I think we need to be aware of. So, you know, when we are able to practice self-compassion, forgiveness, you know, be empathetic, we're able to be more graceful, we're able to be more gentle and more forgiving, actually, of others' weaknesses as well as our own. You know, we can show up, you know, who we are, and that way we invite others to show up and be who they are. And that brings psychological safety in an organization. And when you bring psychological safety, when you lead with love, then, you know, you give people the opportunity to be themselves, who they are, to be creative, to be engaging, to be real, you know. So, yeah.
Love that. Love that. Lead with love, right? And leaders go first, right? And vulnerability, it's uncomfortable. And so you can understand why a person, you know, a leader is a person too, right? So that going first and it's uncomfortable. But think of the impact.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think leadership is too important to be left just to those at the top, right? We're at the era that it's about self-leadership. And if we can apply love in the way that we lead with each other, and I've got a little acronym, so love, listen authentically. If we can listen authentically to each other, not just to what people are saying, but also the things they're not saying, you know, we need to be optimistic. So believe in your ability to succeed, you know, self-belief. Have the courage to be vulnerable, right? So, you know, give yourself the permission to be who you are and give others the opportunity to show up as well. And empowerment. So become this source of empowerment by believing in yourself and by working, you know, towards the things that you want to achieve, you know, by allowing yourself to go back to your normal state. So if we can all, you know, lead with this, with love, then we are creating, you know, much happier. We're creating the world to be a much happier place, because we're, you know, we're seeing others as we want to be seen, you know.
Bhavana, thoughts?
Yes, that's beautiful, actually. You left me speechless there. So yeah, for me, not just leadership, everybody has to become more self-aware if they are not already. And for me, being self-aware is of two things. One is how you perceive yourself. You're aware about what happens inside, what is happening inside you. And the other thing is you're also aware about your immediate, you know, environment and what it's teaching you. So that's your reality, right? The actual reality that's surrounding you. So for me, both have to be in balance, and you need to be aware of both. And only then you will be able to lead with your true self. That's exactly when you see yourself the best. And that's how you will be able to transform or include more people into your energy zone. And that I'm able to see that even on a virtual space. And so that actually shows that distance or meeting in person is not a barrier. You can see that energy transfer to or dissipate into different spaces. And as far as people-centric leadership or human-centric leadership is concerned, I see that this entire pandemic is actually bringing in fresh thinking, which is more aligned with working from home earlier, which was not even allowed to. You had to give a lot of reasons to even work from home. Even if there was a dire situation at home, you still had to give in a lot of reasons, and yet you would get rejected. So now everybody is forced to work from home. And I see that there are a few frustrated bosses because they're totally into micromanagement, and you can't have somebody. I had one person who stood behind my back and would actually read what email I was typing. And that is very difficult to work with. And I'm sure they're all highly frustrated with people who are remotely working now, and they can't have their control as such over anybody. And yet we see that you mentioned, Brian, so you mentioned that though the client had actually seen good productivity in the last couple of months by people staying from home or staying and working from home, they maybe these are the people who fail to notice that and who fail to see that there could be better things by working from home. So these are the HR policies maybe that the new workplace can have, but that they can incorporate. Because you actually see busyness, being busy is maybe uh, highly overused, and you don't know what people are busy with. Everybody's got the same number of hours in a day, and you don't know what prioritizes. What priorities you have in your plate today.
Right.
So it all again boils down to the same thing, right? Being busy is not being productive.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And Rashida was talking about leaders at all levels, and um, that's going to be the way forward. It's a way forward. There's multiple ways forward. The new reality, the new shared reality that I will invite us to look at is one where we look at leadership at all levels, because leaders are people, right? And if we look and lead from where we are, I see that as that gives us the opportunity to bring out the best of each person. And when we do that and respect each person's contribution, think about what that does for the team. And respect rather than fear. Oh no, Rishita and I are going for the same promotion. I can't tell her what I know because then I'll give her what I know. It's like that whole mentality is like, really? Yeah. No, Rishita's got excellent stuff. Bhavana's got excellent stuff to bring. We all do. And what if we just kind of brought all that together and interdependently looked at how do we solve problems and move the business forward and create the environment and create the space for people to flourish. When our attention is moved to that instead of control and certainty and trying to get to certainty, newsflash, there is no certainty. Death and taxes, two things are certain. Other than that, there's no certainty. And so what is our relationship with certainty? It's not about uncertainty. It's what is our relationship with that? How do we choose to engage with that? And so we're talking about self-awareness, Baba, and we're talking about creating a new normal. I'm going to invite us to create a new shared reality. And how do we want to contribute to that new shared reality, right? What does that look like? It looks like humane leadership, like Bhavana was talking about. It looks like what we're experiencing now that is getting people excited on one hand, and other people it's giving them, no, I want back to the old normal. I want back to normal. And I guess I would invite the question, when people say normal, they're really saying what I'm comfortable with, right? And so this notion of it's human to want to be in your comfort zone, but growth happens outside of that. So by saying that we want to go back to normal and stay in normal, you're basically saying you want no growth to happen. And we are human beings designed to grow beyond this learning journey of our life. And so that's the invitation to those that are listening and to us here is, what is this new reality that we want? What is the new space we want to create for ourselves, our families, our communities, our coworkers, the planet? That gets to the humane leadership that we've been talking about, putting humans first. It's not just putting humans first, it's being and putting humans first so that we can create better together. That's my invitation to us. And normal has nothing to do with it. I understand normal from a grounding and whatnot, but normal is sameness. It's static. It's, oh, I'm coming back to home base and now I'm comfortable here. But think about, if you're trying to grow a business, do you want normal or do you want better? If you're trying to improve your community, the resources available to community, the activities available to community, the opportunities for your family, your relationships, do you want a normal relationship or do you want a evolving, growing, nurturing relationship? If you do, if it's the latter, then normal has nothing to do with that.
No.
And so that's my invitation. What are your thoughts when I say that?
I see also another invitation here, and the invitation that I see is to to be more intentional and to be more present, more mindful of today. You know, because actually, that's all we know. That's all we have. What this crisis has done is made us go back to living by the day, living day by day. Taking each day as it comes, being present in today, you know, being fully focused on this interaction, you know, being fully focused on dinner with my family, being fully focused on my walk, noticing the flowers blooming, you know, mushrooms sprouting from the trees, wild mushrooms. These are the things that I would never have seen or noticed if I wasn't so intent, you know, and so focused on today. And that's what I see. I see more of a push towards, you know, let go of yesterday we can't control, let go of tomorrow because we have no idea what tomorrow brings. We only have the gift of today. You know, make it your best life, make it your best day, make it your best by far, because you don't know, you know, whether there is a tomorrow and what that tomorrow looks like. And you know, amazingly, I have connected with people that I have not spoken to for months and years. I have video called family that I haven't seen, you know, that I wouldn't even speak to them. And I've actually dialed, you know, WhatsApp video call. And it was amazing to see how much they've changed, how, you know, the gray hairs, the features. And I was thinking, my gosh, how much time have I lost, you know, being in my busy world, you know, never making the time, always thinking about everything that I had to do, my, you know, getting through my list. And it's made me slow down, and it's made me more focused on the things that actually matter, connecting, you know, being present, being focused, being intentional. So, and that is one of the things, one of the pacts to myself is that, you know, what are the things that are not serving me right now? What are the things that just adding noise, busyness, you know, that just doesn't do anything? Let go, get rid, you know, and what is actually bringing me energy? What is helping me grow? You know, this conversation, the humans first, you know, the calls, connecting with people. And that's what I'm making space for. So I'm really making space for the things that matter. So intentional living is, and being present is another invitation that I see.
Love that, Rishita. And you make me think of this notion of what are we saying no to, or what am I saying no to? And I started being more intentional, back to your language about being intentional, starting like last year, about what am I going to say no to? Because when I say no to stuff, I'm first and foremost, I'm honoring myself. It's not about trying to disrespect or say somebody else doesn't matter or this project doesn't matter, but I'm more intentional with how what I give attention to and how I direct my energy and efforts. And so what I've noticed, and it's somewhat logical, when I do that, I create the space for the stuff that does matter. And it was sort of amazing that these things came into, when I started saying no to stuff, Humans First came into my life, Overcoming Odds, which is a nonprofit that I'm on the board for, of helping people that have lived have gone through difficult life circumstances and helping them see differently in terms of their past doesn't have to be their future and opportunities there. Different projects. I'm doing writing now. I'm doing these We Can Do Better conversations and videos that I haven't done before. All these things that I've always had in me are coming to life because I started saying no to things. And when we set those boundaries for ourselves, we create the space for reflection, presence, and intention, and determining, well, what does matter? And how might I? And asking yourself those questions. And the other thing that came up for me as you were sharing, think about this. You're talking about presence, Rishita, right? And we're talking about uncertainty, and we're talking about the future, and the future is uncertain, right? We can pretty much say that, right? We don't know what a minute from now what's going to be there. What is the closest thing we can get to certainty? Right now, present, what is. And so
yeah.
if anybody needs any encouragement to get present and focus on the present, if you want certainty, guess where it resides?
Yeah.
Right here, right now, in the present.
Right now.
You have your invitation, right? And so I didn't make
Absolutely.
that connection, right? But like we crave certainty, and everybody's like, oh, mindfulness, presence. Why do we do that? Because that's as close as we're going to get to certain right now, because we can see it, we can feel it, we can be it. And so I thought that was interesting. You helped me think of that, and I'm like, and then what does that help us do when we're more present? Oh, I noticed the mushrooms blooming. I noticed this, our noticing muscle. And I talk about building the noticing muscle all the time, which is part of self-awareness. How do we do that? Well, we're in the present, because we're not thinking about 3 months from now. We're not thinking about dinner tonight. We're not thinking about all these things. Oh my God, I've got this project due tomorrow. We're present. We're quieting the mind and we're focusing on now. And so we're noticing, experiencing more. And so when we're all on that note of being able to see that and say, oh, wow, I see what you're saying. We should forget about this notion that nobody can work from home. I need to control you all. You guys can't work from home. Look at what we can get done. We can get all this productivity and our cost, because we won't have to have office space now, maybe, so we can and the colleges won't have to have room and board. So what if we do digital online colleges now? Oh, the cost can come down. Instead of being $250,000 a year in a couple of years. It's all these things that happen. Maybe for the, those businesses that are benefiting from those price points, maybe they'll think differently about that. But look at the opportunities that when we pause, reflect, are intentional about what matters and how to create this new shared reality, we can do that if we're all kind of present, awakened, not seeing exactly the same thing, because we're all different human beings, there's a spectrum, but directionally, if we're moving towards more than just me, more than even just my family, but us, we, and creating better, and be interdependent and somewhat strategic about that. I don't know, that excites me. That's what I find when I'm around people like the two of you and our friends in the human resource community, and people that are like, it's about us. And when we take the purpose and our meaning for what we're doing, and that's another thing that provides us meaning, we have the meaning there, and it's about something larger than us.
Yeah.
That's when we have the resources, the foundation to create better.
Yes, I was about to add to the same point that future is always uncertain, right? We always have the present. That's the only thing we always have now and here. So yeah, building, for me, uncertainty actually brings with it a lot of fluidity in terms of our thinking and our actions. The way I believe and see it is that, you've got to be always present to notice that there is a lot of fluidity. By fluidity, again, I mean that nothing's in your control. Uncertainty brings with it a sense of no control over yourself or things around you, things that happen. And this crisis always brings with it its own shares of lessons. And for a person who doesn't wake up and see them, they will probably stay the same way that they are, or maybe in the normal. And for those that see, they not only survive, but also thrive. So the way I see uncertainty is that you've got to embrace it, or rather you've got to just accept it, that it's always going to be there, because nobody knows what's going to happen next. And the moment you accept it, that's exactly when it opens a lot of closed doors. It opens the doors to you within and outside. And when you already have accepted it, you start building upon it, right? That's when you put in different blocks, and then you have what you want now, or what you need. And then this is the new reality, and that's exactly where you need to start now. And that's when you start building. And how we see it in a bigger community range is by, work from home is a new norm, and everybody understands and accepts it. So there's less pollution, there's less traffic, there's less frustration, there's more family time, there's more, I have seen people who put in 3 to 4 hours more because they're not traveling, because in India, at least you're stuck in traffic for about 3-4 hours. And you cut on all that and you're spending that entire time on your work. So there's more productivity, and there's absolutely, as you said, Brian, I had that point also in mind, which talks about office space. There's less a need for office space. There's less a need for classrooms and boardrooms and everything of that sort. So you're paying lesser rent on all those things. You're paying less for the fuel. There's a cleaner planet. There's a better planet. There's better air. So there's a lot that we can see and build from what we have at the moment. So it comes only after you accept that this is a new reality. This is how it's, at least for the moment, this is how it's going to be. We don't know how things turn out to be next.
Right.
Yeah. So
as you were talking, and this thing, as you were saying to me about the fluidity, Brian's talking to me about this new reality. This idea to me that our life is a continuum. And we often, we're on, it's not, it's line, right? And it's not an and or an or, right? We have contrasts in each side, light, dark, good, bad, uncertainty, certainty. And all our lives, we keep fighting the one end, right? We don't want it, whatever it's bad, we don't want, whatever challenges we don't want. And I feel like this new reality, we need to accept our life as a continuum, as there's this fluidity, as this fluid state. And when we start accepting that with good, we have the bad, with the challenges, we have, the comfort. When we accept that, then I think we will then be creating this new reality. We grow, then we embrace our world. We can live in the as is, because we're no longer fighting, what we don't want. That just sort of came to me as you were talking. And
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic that you brought in continuum, because time and space actually doesn't exist. So it's only now.
Time, space, reality. Exactly.
So when you have this, so when you have this acceptance of what is now and here, you are also grateful for that, right? You start believing that this is how it is, and I'm really happy that it is. You're being grateful for that, and you start building blocks on that, and then that's exactly when you are yourself inspired to do better and to grow well, and you also inspire the one who is next to you.
Oh my God! I just realized something else also, that we don't want a factory reset. We don't want a factory reset. That's not good enough, because what factory reset means is that our operating model is still the same. A factory reset wipes the current memory, but actually what we need, this new reality, what we need is a new operating model. We need a new software, and this is that co-created shared reality for the common good. We need an upgraded software, a new operating model.
I would like to see an article from you on that, please.
Love that, Rishita. And Bob and I, you too, in terms of your comments. So a couple of things came up for me there, right? You're talking about fluidity, and that got me thinking this whole notion of, think about mindsets of being right, having to be right. And there's just one way to do things. And then it's kind of like the duality, right? And then, oh no, well, there's many ways to do things: diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and equity. And how do we create that? We accept views outside of our own. So we're not holding on to and clinging to what we need, but we're accepting what is. Oh wow, Rashita's got a different perspective than I do. She has a different background. What if I got curious about that instead of clinging to what I know because it's comfortable? Back to the comfort notion again, right? And so it's not a reboot, it's a new operating model. Great language there. The other thing that came up, and we're noticing this with our COVID pandemic experience, right? Interconnectedness. And I'm not just talking about people, nature, right? We say, oh wow, we have a lockdown, we have a quarantine. People have to stay home. They're not driving cars. Nature resets. Nature shows us that we can do that as human beings. Human beings reset. Organizations see differently about how they might treat their people and be more empathetic and be more human. And there's this interconnectedness and this ecological ecosystem that's interconnected. And so what does that mean for how people look at socially conscious businesses, sustainability, regenerative leadership, and things like that going forward? And I talked to Sam a lot about these kind of things. We had a conversation last night about that. And it's like, this is what this is bringing up. It's not, and I love the aha you had, Rishita. It's like, you're like in the beginning, oh, it's a factory reset. And it's like, no, it's not a factory reset. It's a new operating model. Yes. It's a new operating model, right? It's no longer like Windows 95.
No.
It's freaking Google or whatever.
Because that's flawed, right? And why do we have to software update every now and again, right? It's like it's a quick fix. It's a false quick fix, and we need to move away from that. You know, it's like we as humans, we detox, we go on a retreat. You know, the quick fix again. You know, so we're not actually addressing what's causing the issues. You know, and it's the Band-Aid approach. You know, all the time. So let's get rid of this software. No more updates. Let's co-create the new version, the new one.
It's so awesome. And so what does that look like for you? If whether it's a month from now, or what, in terms of how do you see your role in creating a new reality? Let me ask Bhavana to start us with that.
Role in creating a new reality.
What do you see as your role? Right? We're talking about this. We've had a great conversation. What do you see your role is in, and whatever it is great, but what do you see your role in creating this new reality, this new shared reality that we're talking about?
First thing that I would stress upon is, again, being aware of where we are and what we are, our strengths and weaknesses. I wouldn't really call that as weakness. It's more like a limitation. I think I already mentioned that. So it's more like how you understand yourself first, and then you bring it on to the entire world to see. And each of us have a world of our own that we construct in our minds, and we invite people to join that world, wherein their world could be totally different from what is in your mind. And to be accepting that there are these differences, and then working towards that in creating a fluid approach to issues, to problems that we need to solve. This crisis, if not this, something else will come up. As we humans have seen a lot of things in millions of years, and we've always evolved. And those who do not evolve or change, rather, with time, you do not see them in the future the way they are. So only when you start adapting to what your current environment is at that moment, that time, that moment, and that situation, unless you do that, you will never grow. And you should always, in my opinion, it's always good to pause and to reflect on what your learnings have been in the past, and yet you see this in the new light. And then learn from that, because it's trying to teach you something. And unless you learn, you will never be able to apply that and grow.
Thanks for that, Bhavana. Awesome. And you talk about adapting, right? And then so that gets me curious about, what does it take to adapt? What things need to be in place, right? And we're talking about presence, we're talking about awareness, we're talking about noticing muscles. And so that's something that I got curious about. Rishita, what are your thoughts?
For me, I want to bring more of myself, imperfections and all, that vulnerability, that courage to be vulnerable. I want to strive less for perfection, more for authenticity. For a long time, I tried to be perfect at everything in my life, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect colleague, the perfect friend, daughter, putting so much pressure on myself, who I was, my expectations of myself, but also of others, takes on just a new reality. So I want to strive less for that, more for authenticity. I want to, and I hope that with that, it will make me more open to other people, help me deepen my understanding of others, be more inquisitive, more curious, ask more questions, less assumptions, really see others, not see through them, hear your story, tell you mine, have real, meaningful, deep conversations, build you up, tell you my dreams, tell you, I just want to, I want to be me, I want to see you, and I want to hear you, I feel you, I want to stand with you. And I think that is what the reality is is moving away from this individualistic way of behaving, feeling, seeing, and being, you know, me first, to us actually. And I think me too is very important, you know, self-healing, compassion, forgiveness. That's important, so that obviously we can obviously give that back to others, but it's not me above you, you know, it's me and you. And that's what I hope to see more in the world.
Rishita, I think that was like a mic drop moment right there. You talked about be me, see you, and stand with you. I'm like, that's like a tagline of some sort, right? That was like awesome. And me first, and moving from me energy to we energy. That's awesome. Love that. And so the new shared reality, it gets back to what you both have been kind of inviting us into. It's shifting your relationship, shifting my relationship with myself, continuing to shift my relationship with myself, and growing my relationship with myself, so I'm able to show up more authentically as me, more genuinely as me, more often, so I can influence from that place, connect from that place, and create impact with and for others from that place. And so this is part of that. I've recently started writing again, and my writing is going to be part of that. The action parties that I've started recently, I'll talk more about that at a different time. But it's creating impact from these insights that we have on calls like this through intentional, purposeful action. And that's whatever it means to you. It's not what it means to me, but creating the space, continuing to create the space for that to happen. And we've got some spaces like in this forum, and it could be Humans First, or it could be thoughts and learning experiences like podcasts or whatever they may be. But the thing I'll invite people into is, when you have that great experience, a learning experience, what happens next? What is the application of that? It's, you know, you had a good experience, and that could be like going to a movie, I had a good experience. Or is it, wow, I learned something, and that's going to mean I'm going to do this when I go back to work, or this when I go back to my family. And that's going to create better, not just for me, but for us, for our family, or for our work, my team. I'm going to be more empathetic. I'm going to ask how you're doing. I'm going to stop by each person's desk and ask about them, not talk about work. I'm going to be understanding when someone has a family situation, they need to step away from the office, more so maybe than I've been before. And because I realize, you know what, by caring about people, that's going to help us create better. And it's going to create an environment of trust and belonging. And hey, I want to bring my discretionary effort. And you know what, that work mask I've been putting on to work for the last however many years, when I have this environment of creating the conditions for belonging and trust and us, I don't need it anymore. So I'm gonna either destroy it, get rid of it, or tuck it away in a closet and hopefully never have to access it again. But that's the thing too. It's continuing to create the conditions by starting with myself, and hopefully being a light for people to kind of help see themselves and help them do similarly, so that we can create better together, starting with ourselves. And it's just the next step forward. Let's just start with the next step forward. We don't have to solve world peace today, but what can we do individually from where we are? And so with that, I'm going to thank you both for your time and your contributions today. One quick thing from either your learning or your insights that you'd like to leave the listeners with, or an invitation you'd like to leave the listeners with before we close up. Rishita.
Trust in yourself, believe in you, and live your best, live your best every day.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Live your best life.
Live your best life. Nice.
Yeah.
Bhavana.
Yeah.
I would say be grateful for what you have at the moment. Live it fully, pause, reflect,
yes,
and learn and move.
Love that, Bhavana. I'm going to have to say this. There's many things that resonated with me today, but this whole, it's not a factory reset, it's a new operating model. It's going to stick with me for a while. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, right? When we say new normal, what you're asking for is a factory reset. I'd invite us to think about that differently. I don't believe we want a factory reset. I believe we want to create together a new operating model that serves us and others and the environment so we can create better together. And so with that, I will thank you both. I invite the listeners to enrich and extend the conversation by putting your comments in. What are your thoughts about what we talked about? What other ideas do you bring to the table in terms of your experiences and your stories that will help us create this new reality together? And so look forward to your comments there. And again, thank you both. And we look forward to continuing to create the space and to take intentional action to create better together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to you too, Rishita. Beautiful points there.
Thank you.